Hello, and welcome back to the Why Comics podcast, where we talk about the comics that impact us. I'm your host, Jesse, and with me today is the host of the Snap podcast, an MCU recap and discussion podcast, resident chicken sandwich expert at Uppercut, and recent kitten mom. It's Kayla Jouet.
Hi, it's me. I think my biggest title is chicken sandwich expert, but yeah, that's me.
I feel like you guys had the discussion of chicken sandwiches on Palin Around, but what is the ultimate chicken sandwich that you can get like anywhere?
Anywhere? Wow.
Because like there's local chicken sandwiches, and that's not fair because I don't live near you.
Right. So I can't talk about the local stuff. I'm not gonna lie, Popeyes did it,
I still
They
never
did it.
had the infamous chicken sandwich.
Oh, you need to do it. It's really good. The sauce is great. The pickles are like buttery. It's nice. They did it. They did it the right way. I'm proud of Popeyes. Representing Louisiana. We love to see it.
I think I'm weird with whenever I see like the chicken sandwiches, the quote unquote chicken sandwiches. I'm like, where's the lettuce and cheese? Where's like extra things? I want more on my sandwiches. But maybe I'm just too complex.
Maybe.
Kayla, thank you for coming on. I've been wanting to have you on for forever. I wanted to have you on like when I was about to do like a Batman episode. It's like I just want to talk to Kayla about superheroes. Because out of everybody at Uppercut, maybe it's you and Jess are like the two most like superhero into it that I know of.
Yeah. I know. I have been wanting to come on for a while. I've been like super busy. I think that's my MO, is just like always being busy. But I think it's funny that I've wanted to come on and talk to you like about Batman or superheroes and stuff. And then the episode that I'm actually coming on, we're not talking about superheroes, which is really cool. So
yeah, and I think that's the most fun about this show too, is I like to talk about things that no one else really is talking about, which to say that no one else is talking about Paper Girls is maybe wrong since there's a TV show in the works and everything. But yeah. So Kayla, what is your background with comics? When did you start reading comic books?
So I have kind of been a loose reader my entire life. Like even as a kid, I would pick up comics, but I was never somebody that would like buy each issue and be like up to date with comics. I tried starting that when I was in college and found out that like comic book reading is a very expensive hobby if you want to be like really continuous with it. And like for me at least, I like the physical editions. I know a lot of people read comics like digitally and it saves more money that way, but I was always somebody that I wanted like my hands on something to read it. So I never I never fully went through a phase where I was like continuously reading things and being up to date with stuff, but I think it was like right around when the Suicide Squad movie got announced. I was already like super into Batman and stuff just from like playing the video games, and I watched all the movies and I was a little bit obsessed. I was like, I'm gonna start reading everything Suicide Squad ever. So I have like a ridiculous amount of Suicide Squad comics and Batman, like just mainly DC stuff in my house. And that kind of fizzled out. And like since then, I've been somebody that like picks up the hobby when I have the time to read.
Yeah.
I am not really like a book reader anymore, but I really do appreciate graphic novels because they can hold my attention a little bit longer. And just recently, I started getting into Image comics. I've really always been like DC Marvel, like very basic. I did read Walking Dead back in the day, like when I was in college, but that was the only Image comics that I had read. So I was just trying to like expand my horizons, get out of the like superhero basics and kind of check out other things. And I knew Invincible was on the rise. So I went and bought a couple like volume ones of a couple different Image comics. I got Chew, Invincible, Saga, and then I got Paper Girls. And Paper Girls like immediately caught my attention, and I was like, I don't want to read anything else. I saw that the series wrapped up, and I was like, I'm going to my local library now, and I'm checking out all of them. And that's kind of where I am today. So yeah.
I want to kind of ask you one question about the Suicide Squad, because now that you've talked about being so into them, did you go all the way back to the original Osander run of Suicide Squad?
Let me see. I have like a visual, like I have to see.
Yeah,
Original comics.
because that's like 80s, I think. It's like it happened after what was this? My brain's like, where's the fact?
I see. I definitely think I read these online, but I don't have the physicals. So when I started buying comics was when like the New 52 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those were the first like Suicide Squad comics that I started like really try to get them all.
That Suicide Squad, I think, is the most infamous for just having everybody's least favorite Harley Quinn outfit.
Yes.
Not much else is remembered from that. But yeah, I think Suicide Squad's one of those groups too that's like, I would say 80% of their books everybody like universally loves, and there's like one or two runs people are like, this isn't great.
There was one run that I have that I really did like her look. That was when she had like the more like pink and blue vibes. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure. I don't remember which one that was.
I think that's right after the New 52, because that's when she got her own book. It had those kind of vibes. And then the most recent run, not the one that's happening right now, but the one right before, was Tom Taylor, who's like doing Nightwing and all of that now. And he just introduced a bunch of queer characters into Suicide Squad. And like, yeah, some of them died because that's the concept of Suicide Squad, but there's so many fun characters that he got to introduce to that. Mm-hmm. So Paper Girls, what was it about Paper Girls that for you, like, this is the book? Because you said you had Invincible and you had, what was the other one?
I got Chew and I got Saga as well.
Which Saga is another Brian K. Vaughan that everybody is obsessed with. So it's like, out of those four, like they're all, Invincible is great because it's like the pinnacle of a cape story. Chew's great because it's a really good, interesting sci-fi mystery. Saga's a really good sci-fi epic, but then you got Paper Girls, which is a time travel story that at first seems very run-of-the-mill. It isn't until like I think late volume 1 maybe that it kind of changes. So like, what was it about that one that like grabbed you right away?
Well, the person who like first described the book to me that made me like want to check it out was that they said that it's like, and I think if you look up the book description anywhere, most people describe it as Stranger Things vibes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. I liked Stranger Things. Like, why not? Throw me in some 80s nostalgia and like kids doing like sci-fi stuff. I'm cool with that. I think honestly, the art is what like gripped me the most. I think it's Cliff Chiang, right?
Yeah, Cliff Chiang's doing the art.
Yeah, I love the art style. It is very much like, I don't know, it gives me like Blade Runner-esque vibes. Like it's very bright and stylized. Also with the time travel, like the art style changes a little bit as you go through, and it's so colorful and it's fun and I love it. So I think that got me. The fact that it was like 4 girls leading the story was really cool. Because, you know, Stranger Things, it's like 4 guys and then you get the girl added along the way. But it was just like a cool, fun story. And then, like you said, it picks up later. So I was just like vibing with it. But once it starts picking up with like the weirdness, I was like out loud as I was reading it. I was like, holy shit, like what is happening? Like, and it wasn't like a what is happening that I was like confused and like not into it. It was like, I am confused, but I need to know what is happening. And I had to keep reading to be like, what is going on here?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the brilliance too of the entire series, which we will probably touch upon spoilers of the entire series. So anybody listening to this who hasn't finished or started reading Paper Girls, what are you doing? But the entire story never really fully shows its hand when it comes to the time travel. A lot of time travel stories will like try to explain itself, or they will just say we're never going to explain ourselves, so just forget about learning about what's happening, and just enjoy what's happening in front of you. Where this story gives you bits and pieces but then reverses them and goes, oh, that doesn't make sense because that doesn't fit to this key that we're given right now. Or later down the road, all of a sudden you're giving another answer. It's like, well, that doesn't fit with the answer I was given before, so now what's the real answer here? And it's not until the last I think it's second to last issue, maybe it's the third to last issue, that they really like lay everything fully out for you. And you realize even some of the false information is true, it just didn't fit the way you think it fits.
Right.
And I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this, is such a convoluted and twisted time travel story that Brian K. Vaughan somehow was able to piece together at the end.
Right.
For you, when it comes to time travel stories, is there anything in particular that you thought this one did differently than most of the other ones that you've seen or read? And what kind of like tropes do you think it falls into itself?
I don't think it does anything like too different. Time travel is such a weird trope and a weird thing to play with. I talked a lot about this when Endgame came out, and I had a million people in my DMs like, can you explain this to me? And I was like, no, I can't, because they didn't make any sense. And there's this thing with most media, or not media, but I guess like comics, TV shows, whatever else, the pop culture of time travel, where they have to explain themselves. Like you said early on, they'll explain like the rules of time travel. You have to do that to like set your story, because otherwise it gets really muddled. It doesn't make any sense. Paper Girls, I think, I thought they did a really cool take on the time travel, where like you think that you're traveling to the future in the past and you're changing things, but in reality, that was the way it was supposed to be the whole time, because that time has already looped. Like things have already happened. Can I already go into spoilers?
Yeah,
Can we, like, big spoiler warning? And again, like like he said, please, if you have not read the story and you are interested, it's only 30 issues.
Yeah.
Go read it. It's so much fun and it's really good. And there's a lot going on with like, I don't know, the coming of age story, like almost, but not in the traditional way, because when you're 12, you're on that like area of like, am I a kid or am I growing up? Like, what is happening? And it's just really good. Anyway, spoilers.
And I think too, with like a lot of time travel stories, the spoilers, they won't impact you a ton just because you don't know context.
Right.
So like if you want to just know a little bit more, I don't think it'd be too harmful to listen to some spoilers. But yeah, there's gonna be tons of spoilers probably.
Oh no, I was about to talk about something that's like very spoiler.
Yeah.
So when I talk about how like in this story, it's one of those like you can think you're going to the future and the past and you think you're changing things, but really like the way that it happened was supposed to happen all along. Is like the first time that they time travel, one of the girls, they meet somebody who tells them like, oh, you died of cancer. Like you died of cancer, of leukemia. So the entire story, this girl is like struggling with the idea is like, I'm going to die one day. I'm going to die young. I'm going to die of leukemia. This sucks. Like what matters? Nothing matters. And then they go to this distant future where they're like, they find there is a cure for cancer here. So you're reading it and you're like, oh, this is going to change everything. She's going to cure her cancer here. She might like go back and actually live an adult life. And then you find out like, oh, she never had leukemia. That's just what they thought it was, because back in the day, they couldn't tell the difference about a lot of different cancers. Really, you have a cancer that only happens to people who time travel. Yeah. So like it was going to happen no matter what. It was like the cycle was already going to happen no matter what. There's nothing that she could do to change that. And that's what I really liked about the story, was it's not something where like big butterfly effects happen, because there are very small changes that we see at the end of the story, literally the last issue. But still, we don't really see the repercussions of those. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, and like to be fair to the story too, like Brian K. Vaughan isn't scared of kind of making stuff up to play into his plot the way he wants it to. Also, like there's a scene where a future version of one of them explodes and you're like, oh, that person's dead, so like that's your future now, you're gonna die here in the future. And then later you see her as an old lady and she's like, well, a split second before it blew up, they pulled me out of there. And it's like,
but we didn't see that timeline because that was like not what we were meant to see.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, oh, okay, so like, if this character needs to show up here, you're going to kind of not bend the rules, but like hide a fact from us so we can get to it eventually.
Right.
And I do think the end, when the timeline changes with them being saved from an accident, and we see who changed the timeline, which is basically kind of the grandmother of all of this, the person who kind of caused all of this in a way. It makes me wonder if she knows something no one else really does about, like, sometimes fate can be broken.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like, her and her son who gets saved from the like prehistoric era and get sent to the future, like, they should have probably stayed there, and like that's a fate that was broken in that way. So like I'm very curious, like, what is Brian K. Vaughan trying to say at the end there? Is like, is fate really set in stone for everybody?
Right. And I think that kind of doubles up too, because the way that I interpreted the ending, this one small choice of being like, oh, actually, can we all hang out a little bit longer?
Yeah.
Changed the timeline, because they were going. So then, like, they were spoiler alert again, they were supposed to get hit by a car, so like maybe that was like the universe being like, actually, no, you're not supposed to go this separate way, so like, fuck you. But then, grandmother of time basically was like, I see this happening and I know that's gonna happen, so I'm gonna come time travel here and make sure that it doesn't happen. Like, and that just made my whole brain like spiral. And like, I wonder how many times now that they were like, something was supposed to happen and then she's like come in and fixed it.
Yeah.
Like after the fact.
Yeah. I wish there was more. And again, like, this is where you get lost in the weeds when it comes to stories like this, but I wish there was more information on the aliens that kind of like were sheltering the time travel, the ones that were giving everybody visions, the ones that the son was like, thought he was chosen to protect, but then eventually shoots one of them and kills them. It's like, what's the deal with that?
We never really got anything about that. That was the one thing that I was left on. And I don't know like the history of the series, and if like they had to wrap it, if they had like other plans for it and they had to wrap it, or like what. But yeah, there was like literally no explanation of like the beholder looking aliens and like the pyramids and stuff.
And even like the mutant teenagers, I thought weren't explained super well. Like, they were explained, but they weren't like super heavily like shown like, this is what happened to us.
The thing that I took from them is that like they were very far in the future. Like they were further in the future than the like old timers or whatever they were called. So like maybe by then there's like weird like pollution going on, and that's like fucking with people, and then they have to have like cybernetics, it was like a cyberpunky vibe, and that was why that they look like that. But I don't know.
And the concept of the time war that's happening in the background of the whole story too is very interesting, because rereading it, I don't remember them explaining what's the cause of it all, just that they're having it and it's never ending. And it makes me wonder if it's just like the idea that one generation's eventually gonna get fed up with another one, and they're gonna have an endless fight because it's always a generation fighting another generation.
Yeah,
which is kind of where we're at in a lot of ways. Not to be like, oh man, look at this in society now, but it kind of is. Like, it's many generations kind of interfighting with each other currently.
Yeah, I have two comments on the generation thing. The first is that I really liked that they did that, because that's something that I don't think we've really seen in a lot of like pop culture with time travel, is like, what are the implications of that besides like a butterfly effect, besides things happening? Like, most of the time when we see time travel, there's just one person or like a couple people using it, and they've used it, and then that's it, that's their thing. But this is talking about time travel on like a secular, like so many people have access to it, so of course you got to think about like what could happen. Like, so the idea that there's like a war behind it, because like some people say that like it's very sacred and you should only use it for certain reasons, where other people are like, no, terrible events happened, we should go prevent them and like see what comes of it. But but yeah, that's my one point, is that I really think that's cool that like we get to see conflict around time travel.
Yeah.
My second comment is there's a couple issues, I would say like 2/3 of the way through, where you meet this like older woman who
Yeah.
met some time travelers when she was younger, so she knows how to like not get her brain wiped, and so she's like been hiding messages in the newspaper for people to find her, and she knows about the time travel, but she's a boomer, and she makes a comment, and like you're like, oh, this is this cool lady, she makes a comment that she's a baby boomer, and I'm like, oh, she's really cool, that's fun. And then like all of a sudden she like points her gun at them and she's like, y'all are gonna screw everything up, and I'm like, god damn it, boomers. Yeah. Like she did the boomer thing where she was like, y'all are gonna change things and you can't, and it's like, that's exactly what the people who are talking to you are fighting for, so like, yeah, what are you doing?
It was super fascinating too. Is the end of her story is like, so before they set up like that the time traveler or like the old people, old guard, I don't know, like the people, the bad guys are basically when they shoot someone, it seems like they just die. We don't know what happens when they shoot them. It just they like disappear, and it looks like they're evaporated. And so there's a part where they're in a church, and all of a sudden one of the husband of one of the girls who's in the future gets hit with the gun, and they're like, oh no, did they just kill my future husband? And they go, no, we just send them back to their bed and we erase their memories. And you're like, oh, okay, so that's what's happening, everybody. And then the old lady shows up, starts shooting people, and she then gets hit with something else though that they have, and she just dies. Like they're like straight up murder her because she's like, she definitely knows way too much. We can't do anything for her.
Did they murder her? Because I thought that they did the same thing where they just like wiped her.
She just gets set on fire basically with whatever blast. Her corpse is like laying there, and they even comments like, oh, she's dead. Like she's like, we still see her, we can smell her burning.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's kind of like the thing where it's like she's like so determined to stop them, where she's like now going to be permanently destroyed because she knows too much.
Right. That changes things for me, because I thought that I didn't pick that up, and I thought that she just got like her memory wiped, and I was like, oh, that sucks. You spent your whole life not getting your memory wiped, and now you did, but now she's dead.
Yeah. And I think about the person who invented time travel, that the girl who gets the time traveling cancer meets, and she has the cancer too, and she's like, I'm sorry that I created the disease that you now have, basically.
Right.
And they have like a really deep and kind of philosophical questions, like, what would you change, what would you do different? And the girl's like, no, it doesn't matter, like, if I'm dying young, everything so far has been good though. This has been a good life for someone who's 12. And it's like, they call them teenagers a lot when they're not. they're right. Like 12 years old still.
They're preteens. Yeah.
And they're still like exploring things and exploring like what life is. And I think it's another really cool thing that Brian K. Vaughan does in this. For it's only 30 issues, he kind of dives into so many social issues, especially like dealing with characters that are in the late 80s. There's queer storylines, there's racial like divide storylines. It's just really interesting to read those through this lens of time travel, and to see like they see like the Hillary Clinton sign on someone's lawn, and goes, oh, a woman for president. Like, well, she's running for president. Well, I hope she wins. it's like, but the context of it, you're like, they don't get it. Or later they see a black president in the far future, and the one black character goes, oh, there's a black president. And they go, there's been many of those. And to them, that's just like, that's cool. I think one of them says, I want to live to see this future. And so there's some of those that are like really I think well placed. And then like the beginning of the story, one of the girls calls someone the F slur for gay. I'm not gonna say it on the show, but then they recreate the same thing at the end after she's had a queer experience with one of her friends, and actually falls in love with one of her friends, even though she kind of denies it for a while. At the end, she doesn't say the slur, she just calls him a fart face.
I know. I
And
noticed that.
yeah, and it throws him off completely. And this is at the point that they're not supposed to remember anything, but she definitely does because she had a dream about it all.
Right.
I think they all do, but they really should focus on hers.
I was gonna say, I think out of all the characters, Mac is my favorite out of the four, because character growth. And I know when we think about people who have like sometimes like really terrible viewpoints, like I like to think like maybe they were raised that way. And I think this is a prime example of like, she's only 12 years old. She was she's raised up in this very conservative, very I think she has an older brother, and she talks about her dad a lot, who I'm assuming is very conservative. So there's so many moments in the story where she's like, there was also, I think she said, there's another slur, and it wasn't like a queer one that she used at some point, but like she says a lot of things, and then you learn again that she is struggling with her sexuality. But I think what's really interesting is that KJ, the girl that they end up having a relationship, KJ, like neither of them really know about their sexuality until like KJ finds out because of a vision, and then she's like, maybe I am gay, and she's like, oh yeah, I am. Like she never thought about it, like she's only 12 years old and she wasn't thinking about those kind of things. And then you have Mac, who maybe she was, or maybe she wasn't thinking about it, but like what she was thinking about was internally, like she was pushing it away because of the people who raised her and the people around her. So she was becoming like hateful. And then again, there's this great character growth towards the end where like, she's like, oh, well, like maybe she can be my girlfriend. I want to go back and like spend out the rest of my, like, I don't know when I'm going to die, but it's going to happen when I'm young, but then I'm going to get my memory wiped. And then I'm not going to know that. And then I could just be happy with my girlfriend, and like, maybe we could have a relationship. And it's just like really great. And I really loved the entire Mac storyline. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, I think Mac is probably the best character because there's so much growth with Mac, and Mac comes off as the de facto leader, even though she probably has the least control out of all the characters. She gets thrown around a bunch throughout the story. I also like the idea that they struggle with in the story, and they don't really come up with an answer until the end of like, is there God in this world? Where when Mac's talking to the creator of time travel, she goes, yeah, there is, and like I can't explain it to you. But at the end, I think it's AJ that talks about Eve did nothing wrong by eating the apple. And one of the future versions of one of the characters goes, oh, she's talking about one of those old biblical stories. And then she says that AJ is like, don't worry about those. They were all written by men.
Which is funny because the entire comic series is written by all men as well. And I think they're poking fun at themselves in writing that. But it's funny because they did write us a very female-led story. Not just the fact that it's like 4 girls, but like almost every protagonist, every side character that you meet, everyone that leads them to their destination is female. There is a handful of male characters, and I want to say that like none of them are explicitly like cis heterosexual white men. Like all the like newer, or I don't remember what they're called, but it's
they just call themselves teenagers if you're talking about the mutated kids.
The mutated teenagers, they're gay. It's like there's 2 white kids and they're gay. And
that
then
story was so sad.
I know, it really was. And then like the main like bad guy, quote unquote, is not white, you know. So it's very interesting that they wrote this story on this lens, and you don't see that a lot. You don't see a lot of stories where there's not a huge amount of like white men at the center of the story. So I thought that was like really great and really cool. So,
and even the cast of girls, like there might be just, I think there's 2 white girls, but like I think who is it? One of them is Jewish.
Yeah, KJ's Jewish.
One of them's black, and I think one of them might be
Aaron's Asian.
So it's like
I'm not sure.
they allude to it. I don't think they ever outright say it. But like it's a pretty diverse cast of girls too, and all different personalities, all different like types of dynamics going on. I like when they meet the future version of Erin. She's like taking a Xanax, and she goes, "Why are you taking this Xanax pill?" She's like, "For my anxiety." And she looks at her like, "It looks like I already had it at this age too." So yeah, the I'm gonna talk about the art too for a second. It's like it's Cliff Chiang and Matt Wilson does the colors for it. And these are like two of the top, I think, artists and colorists like together making this book. And I don't know how much of a break there were between story arcs because they split the volumes every 5 issues. Mm-hmm. And every 5 issues is kind of its own story arc. It's all connected, but you can tell there's a theme going on every 5 issues. And like a big plot twist happens usually every 5 issues. So I'm wondering if there was a break in between certain volumes, because having Cliff Chiang do a consecutive 30 issues seems insane to me, because when you get to a certain level, like Cliff Chiang or people like Cliff Chiang, like Fiona Staples doing Saga right now, and stuff like that, like they can't work on a book that consecutively. Just it takes too much time for the way they do the art now. And so, but you never see an art dip, you never see quality dip, you never see a fill-in artist for one issue. And then Matt Wilson like is always coloring to like the top tier. I think this is the one he might have won his Eisner for. Like, so it's really fascinating too to see all three of these guys like on the top of their game for 30 issues straight. Like, there's not a single issue that feels worse than the last one or worse than the one coming after it.
Right.
And I think that's something special too, that kind of adds into kind of the magic of the whole book as like a entire story.
Yeah, I think and like I'm not as into comics as you are, so I don't know a lot of like colorists and artists and stuff like that, but just like I said from the get-go, I think the colors, the brightness, the style of the story was what drew me to it immediately. It was just, it's so colorful. This is a beautiful story. And like the way that they write it is just, and I mean, not the way that, well, yes, the way that it's written is great too, but the way that it's illustrated is just, it's great. I am already ordering the like deluxe issues so I can have like the big like hardcovers I could actually have in my house, because the art is that great and I want it.
And you get the nice bigger formats. The art's a little bit bigger. Did you read any of the letters pages of any of the issues, or did you kind of skip over those?
I skipped those because I was just like trying to get through.
Yeah,
but I am going to reread them whenever they come in.
Those are always fascinating. But I think my favorite thing is the third to last issue, or maybe it was the second to last issue, when you think the timeline kind of implodes on itself. The letters page itself fades out of existence at the end.
Oh.
And like the last like half of the last letters page just kind of fades out like a Thanos snap. And it's like, so it really makes you think that like something bad just happened in the last issue, when it turns out they kind of just reached the apex of whatever event's about to happen.
Right.
What did you think overall of the climax, like the conclusion of the main story? Not really the last issue, which is mostly epilogue, but like basically the standoff that they have in the Old West at the end with all the characters finally showing up together.
It's funny that you say it like that, because it very much was a standoff in the Old West, and like I didn't put two and two together that like that's kind of like the play that they were doing. I do wish that there were more issues, because like I said, I think like, or we both talked about how they didn't really harp on the alien stuff too much. I think it all happened so fast. I like the buildup and everything that we see with them all going to like different timelines and then all coming back together, but it happened so fast. So I wish there was a little bit more like plot happening, or at least in the time where we see Erin with what was the villain's name?
What was the villain's name? Let me try to Google it real fast.
I think it was Joppo, right?
I think you're right, but I'm
Yes,
trying.
it's Joppo.
Okay.
Yeah. So like there's like a brief moment where he's like trying to do that thing where villains like to do where they're like, we actually aren't the bad guys. Look at the things that we've done. We're great. But it's cut so short that like you don't really get to get that. I really like in villain stories where like your brain kind of goes like, oh well, maybe they are right. Like you kind of think of it, and I didn't feel like we got enough of that to make me want to pick either side because I
Yeah.
think the lines are very blurred. Where I'm kind of like, no, I don't think we should fuck with the past. I think that's a problem. But also, like, I don't like that somebody's like in charge of gatekeeping
Yeah.
the things like that, you know? So there's like, I don't agree with either of them, but it would have been nice to like dive more into that. So I thought it was really fast. And again, the whole alien thing, the alien literally comes through at the showdown and like hits him once. And then he's like, oh, you're right.
Yeah, it's weird because like the villain loses all steam at the very end just because he sees that he's wrong, like
Yeah.
visually. And it's funny too. Like if he's supposed to be the keeper of these guys, I'm like they're supposed to be leading him. He's never touched them once.
Right.
Like it's a little odd.
It is. Yeah.
I think his story is super interesting, but it gets lost in the shuffle a lot too because you like I think about the issue with the two giant kind of mech fight in the middle of the town. I think is in the 90s. It's happening. It's right before Y2K happens. So yeah, it's 99. And his like lover gets killed in
Mm-hmm.
the mech fight, and that happens. It's very tragic. They build it up, but then it kind of just gets lost. Like it never was touched on again until the very end, where he's like, "I'm tired of losing people." It's like, well, that
Yeah.
happened for you like 100 years ago.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I think that was supposed to be like his motivation throughout the story to
Yeah,
like continue looking for the murderers, quote unquote, and looking for these people. And then again, it's talking about the time travel. It's one of those stories where I think no matter what happened, like this loop is going to continue because these people needed to be here at the right time and do the right thing. His lover was always going to die, and like they were going to be there at the same time because they were there when he was a baby and had to like help that girl, the time traveler, like get free from the bad. You know, it was just like I don't know. I'm about to go off on a tangent, I guess.
that's fine.
But no, I just it's cool. The whole like time travel loop. It's it's nice because it's not convoluted. It's
Yeah,
nice because it's not in the end game story where they're like, well, if you do travel in time, it's not like you're really traveling in time. You're just traveling to that time period, and then it's separate. So if you take something, but then you have to put it back, like they don't make it complicated because it doesn't have to be complicated. They're just like, it's a loop. It's always going to be a loop. This happened. It's always going to happen. But you get to go on that journey with me and see it all happen. And I really enjoyed that.
and they don't do the looper thing where they just go, you know what, time travel is too confusing. We're not going to explain it. We'll just believe it happens.
Right.
Like they actually take the time to lay out the timeline to an understandable manner. And I agree with you. I think if this was 35 issues, I don't think it would outstay its welcome. I think those 5 issues could explore some of the concepts a bit better. They would probably be too exposition heavy, but I don't know. Maybe you could spread it out a bit better. I am curious if this series was cut short at all, if this is exactly how they all three had it planned.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, 30 issues is still a lot of issues. That's over 3 years worth of issues, depending on release schedule. So it's a lot. But
Yeah.
I am curious too because it's becoming a TV show now, which is I think it's still going to be written by Brian K. Vaughan because he does TV writing now. But it's also being like show run by the guy behind *Halt and Catch Fire*, that AMC show. And that guy's also currently writing Iron Man, so like he knows comic books at least.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious, like if they will take the time to explore some of these characters a bit further, because I know with a lot of comic adaptations recently, the writers are actually being able to write them themselves and being able to rewrite either mistakes or kind of put things in better pacing. Because I know like with Invincible is not exactly the same as the comic, because Kirkman's like, I can make this pacing better, and also I can make some of these characters not as tropey or insensitive as they were.
Right.
So I am curious, like, what the show is going to do with the plot itself.
I guess we'll see.
Is there any other parts of the comic that you wanted to like touch upon?
I like that it starts on Halloween. I think that's fun. That was a fun way again to start it. It's like 4 girls delivering papers on Halloween. Like, of course, something crazy is going to happen. Do you know why they referred to that day as like the hell morning?
It's weird because like kids are trick-or-treating in the morning.
Yeah, but they said the hell morning of this year, and like it's just I don't know if that was like a town thing, like why they called it that.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just a thing about paper routes, like Halloween's the worst time to deliver papers. Like, I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't know. Were they delivering it in the morning, or was it like an overnight thing where like they had to do like a route like really late at night and then the sun rises? Like,
it would be weird because it's at the end of the last issue, they said, oh, we have to go to school. So if it was an all-night thing, that seems unhealthy.
And there is something that I wanted to bring up, talking about like the queer story.
Yeah.
There is a moment that like it really made me like tear up. So the last issue, as I was reading it, I kind of felt like I wanted to tear up because I really liked the story and I liked learning about these kids, and it was just really nice. But there was this moment where like when Mac and KJ have their first kiss, it's during a sunrise. And there's this moment where they're driving in the like epilogue. I mean, they're biking in the epilogue, and KJ mentions wanting to like see a sunrise, or she likes to watch the sunrise, and Mac looks at her and is like why is that? And then there's like a pause, and she's like, I don't really know. And it's just like a drawback to like, they don't know because their memories got wiped, but like that emotion is still there. So like it did kind of change it. And it was great. I loved it. It was good book.
And I like it at the end too that they all need a cigarette after almost being hit by a car. And the talk about I think it was Aaron that says like, now I see why they don't want us to smoke these. They taste delicious. And I'm like, I don't know anybody that thinks that at the first cigarette. But then KJ's coughing on the cigarette. And it's just like all of them have like different like personalities just smoking a cigarette in that last page. So moving on to some quick question and answer. I want to pick your brain about a few other things regarding comics. I know you started picking up comics again with a bunch of grabbing all those graphic novels from Image. Is there a genre you think now that you prefer more than all the others?
I think art style really sticks out to me. So I don't know if genre sticks out, but if I'm reading something, I need it to like really grab me. I need to be able to like, because I know that sounds silly, but it's like the story could be great. It could be a great story, but like that's the whole reason why I'm reading the graphic novels, is because I want to visualize it. And I really like being able to see like what I'm looking at on the page, and it looks nice and it jumps out at me. But I don't know if there's a genre per se. I don't know if there's a genre per se, because I love the like beat 'em up Batman comics, you know. Was New 52 the Court of Owls?
Yes.
Yeah. So those are amazing to me. I love the court because I love like kind of like the horror-esque like vibes that you get from that. That's when you get the Joker that like has his fucking face like cut off and sewn back on. Like that stuff really freaked me out. And I don't even really like horror stuff that much, but I loved those comics because I thought they were just like, they just spooked me, and I like want something to sit with me. And you know, like The Killing Joke is a very like haunting story as well. So I think I like ones that will like make my brain kind of think on it for a while. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a specific genre. Those are some of the ones that I really like, though.
And now that because I know you chosen Invincible. I know you said you read Walking Dead, you read Batman stuff, and I'm assuming you read a little bit of Marvel stuff.
Yeah.
Do you like? Do you prefer the media still inspired by comics more than the comics themselves, or is it now like a good mix of both that you enjoy?
I think a good mix of both. I think media inspired by comics are a lot easier to consume,
Mm-hmm.
um, especially like if you have like any type of like if you're like neurodivergent, like have ADHD or anything like that. A lot of times, like that's the easiest way for us to consume content is through like media and being able to see it that way. And it definitely makes it easier. That being said, I think some of the best stories of the comics like come straight from the comic. You know what I mean? They're not in
Yeah.
the media. Um, especially when it comes to like Batman stories and stuff like that. And then when you do get like some of the movie versions of the Batman stories, aka like the Killing Joke, I have so much like I don't like I end up not liking them because I think that like the changes they made, the inspirations from it don't match the story and the way that they
Yeah.
were trying to tell it in the comics. So I mean it's that same conversation I think people have when they're like, do you like the books versus the movies better? And then everybody always says the book because the book always has more content and things change. But comics, I think, is an interesting medium to talk about because we are now getting so many like comic style movies brought to the big screen, which like we didn't have like that wasn't a thing back in the day, really. Like there was little bits, but they weren't as like CGI'd and like incredible like what the MCU did, you know. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's nice to be able to just like sit down and watch a full season of Invincible in one night because I totally did that. Like 9 hours worth of Invincible in one night. But I also would love to get like the collections and read them all
Yeah.
over time and like dive more into the story. So
And there's something to be said too about a bit of, again, reining stuff in, because I think about The Boys the most. It's like, I know so many friends who are like, oh, The Boys sounds like an interesting book, and they try to read it and they get real grossed out real fast. But then the show's still gross and it's still like extreme, but it's such a tamer version of what you can fit into a comic, because comics have no real regulators anymore.
Yeah.
Where TV still kind of does, even if it is like digital only, like it still has a ratings bureau to kind of be like, you can't get away with that. So yeah, that is interesting. And the last question for you, now that you are back in the comics, you've been in comics for a while, do you see yourself ever wanting to make your own independent book?
Oh, that's a fun question. I I don't know. I do love writing. I feel like art wise, I would definitely that's somebody else's job that I would have to pay them handsomely for. But I do love writing and creating stories. That was like something that I learned about myself in the last like year, starting to play D&D a lot and DMing a lot and like creating my own stories. World building is so hard and tedious, but so much fun. So like, yeah, I mean, I think that would be like the coolest thing. Do I think that I can do it? And if it's feasible, probably not. But also, I mean, who knows? Who knows what'll happen down the line, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the thing I always think about. It's like one day maybe I can write a script, but then it's the idea of having to find an artist and stuff feels exhausting already.
Right.
Kayla, thank you so much for coming on and talking to me. Hopefully we can have another episode down the road where we talk about Batman for a very long time.
Oh, I'd be
Um,
so down with that.
but where can people find you in the work that you're currently doing?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at OA Kayla. I just retweet games industry stuff because that's really what my medium is video games. And I'm also with Uppercut. So you can find us at Uppercut Crit or at uppercutcrit.com, where we talk about games. We have a lot going on there. There's podcasts, there's written reviews and written articles. We stream sometimes at twitch.tv/uppercutcrit. And it's me and some pals, and it's a good time. We are a very queer-led site. We like to uplift more diverse voices and marginalized voices in the games industry, because Lord knows we need it. So that's kind of my thing. Video games are my thing. But outside of that, I love me some MCU. I love me some Batman, and I love anything fun and nerdy. So that's why I'm here talking about Paper Girls.
And also there is, if you support Uppercut on Patreon, which you should, there's a certain tier that gets you some bonus episodes. And in those bonus episodes, there are tabletop games that they've played. And there's a fantastic one where Kayla is a part of a Batman tabletop where every player plays bad guys.
Yeah. It's really great. I actually hosted that one. I was the DM, and the best part about that episode is that I handed everybody characters, and I was like, you have to pick out of this handful of characters. You don't get to pick which ones you want, because I have to make them and make sure that they don't break the game. And I started it off where I was like, you're all in a bar, and you just have to go introduce yourself without saying who you are. And it's really funny, because the way that I made them describe themselves, and they had to figure out who they were. It was fun. It was a good time. Definitely support us on Patreon. Even $1 is something for us. So Uppercut on Patreon. Look for us. We got a big old glove, and we're gay.
And they have big dreams that they need more money to support.
Exactly.
And for the show, you can find it on Twitter at YComicsPod, Facebook at facebook.com/YComicsPodcast. You can email me at ycomicspodcast@gmail.com. If you have a question for a guest, want to be a guest on the show yourself, or have a story that you want read on air, you can reach me at all those places. If you like the show, please leave a review and tell a friend. Logo for the show is done by Andy Manley, who you can find working on The Simpsons currently. Banner is done by my friend Steven, and the theme is Join the Restaurant by David Szesztay. And remember, everybody, Captain America, punch Nazis.